Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Cantor Dan Mutlu from Central Synagogue, for those I haven't met. And of course, we are here to remember and to lay to rest our beloved Alice Heyman, a woman of fierce conviction, radiant spirit, and unwavering purpose. Alice's passing brings to us a close of a life marked by vision, courage, and an unshakable dedication to justice. And though we were graced to walk part of the journey with her, it's now time to say goodbye. We know that there are no words or prayers that can fully contain the force of Alice's life, nor the space she now leaves behind. Her presence was so vibrant, it was unforgettable, rooted in determination, adorned with flair, and always guided by a deep belief in what is right. And yet, in the midst of our loss, we know that there is comfort. There's comfort in memory, in song, prayer, and in the company of one another. It's in the spirit that we come together to honor a life lived boldly, to cherish the many ways Alice touched each of us, and to begin the sacred act of saying farewell. This is a very unique group. Each person here carries a part of Alice's story, and it is as family, as friends, as caregivers, as fellow travelers. And we just want to name those who have been a part of Alice's life, and not to exclude anyone, but just to cast a wide net of her legacy and those who shared in her love. So I mentioned her brother Michael, family and friends, Joe, Adam, Stephen, John, Stephanie, Caroline, William, Jilly, Marjorie, Robert, Nancy, Bruce, Nancy, Andrew, and Dan. Each of us is a living testament to the legacy that Alice leaves behind. And so we begin our time together, not with a psalm as we might normally do, but with a prayer in Hebrew that became a personal blessing during the last chapter of Alice's life. Alice came into my life around 5 years ago. I was fortunate enough to know her and to visit her. And often during these visits, I would sing the words of Hashkivenu, a prayer for peace and protection, for shelter throughout the night, for renewal in the morning. So we ask you, O God, that these ancient words wrap us in the same comfort and hope they once brought to Alice. May they guide her gently into eternal rest. Hashkivenu, Hashkivenu, Adonai. My shepherd. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. Mourning is the price we pay for having the courage to love one another. Even in grief, we know that the wonder of human life is too complex and too magnificent to be memorialized in endless pain. The gifts of spirit that Alice gave us cannot be measured or weighed, nor can they be lost or even tarnished by time. Even in our saddest moments, our darkest hours, We know that some of her light and her warmth will always be with us, bringing comfort and courage, and in the fullness of time, healing and peace. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be and oh, to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing to love, what death has touched. There are no words sweeter than those of loved ones who come to mourn and remember Alice. At this time, I call up members of Alice's family as well as friends. In this order, Bruce, Cheryl, Stephanie, and June. Alice for her last 5 years, and she was happy. We all owe a debt to the people who made her happiness possible. It does take a village. So before I start, I want to recognize Stephanie, who gave her time and energy and more time and more energy to Alice's well-being. June and Audrey, who so lovingly cared for Alice. Florence, for her kind treatments. My brother Bob, for his many visits to Alice's bedside. And Cantor Dan, whose songs with Alice brightened her last years. For everyone I don't know, I am Bruce Judson. My father, Mush Judson, of blessed memory, was Hench's son and Alice's cousin. To me, Alice was like a favorite young aunt whose life was intertwined with mine. At age 67, it's hard for me to remember a time when Alice was not in my life. So today is the final chapter in a 60-plus year relationship, a relationship that enriched and helped to shape the arc of my life. There have been just two people that called me Brucey. One was my mother, of blessed memory, and the other was Alice. And conversations with Alice did not finish the way they did with other people. It was not, I will talk to you soon, thanks for calling, or even love you. Alice always had the last word. It was always, now Brucey, listen to me. And I will come back to those conversations shortly. My bar mitzvah passed in a whirl, but one of the few things I vividly remember is Alice driving up to our house in her Mercedes-Benz. It was about a year after Oscar's passing. She must have been 33. She was vibrant, still young, exciting, and flamboyant. On our living room wall, we have a watercolor painting of Hillel with calligraphy of his famous statement, "If I am not for myself, who will be? If I am only for myself, what good am I? If not now, when?" The painting was Alice's wedding gift to Nancy and I. And for 35 plus years, wherever we lived, it has accompanied us. A few days ago, as I looked at the painting, I realized something new. When we were married, Alice did not just give us a painting. She gave us a statement of her values, which she lived by example. If not now, when? Alice was a person of action. Now, Brucey, listen to me, was always followed by what Alice said I was going to do.
because Alice was all about doing. She did, and she did what she thought was right. I think of Alice from two sides. One was her life in the larger world, and the other was our relationship. Cheryl will talk about Alice's advocacy to foster social equality. So I want to talk for a moment about the other aspect of Alice's broader life. As I think most of you know, for 40 years, Alice was the publicly anonymous owner of the crown of the Andes, which she inherited from her father. By the early 2000s, Alice had some financial issues, but she also had 5 pounds of gold and 442 emeralds weighing 846.15 carats. She had one of South America's most famous and significant artifacts, which dated to 1660, and certainly the only item like it in private hands anywhere in the world. She owned the storied crown of the Andes. And Alice made a decision. I know about it because I was there. Alice could have quickly become immensely wealthy if she had been willing to sell the crown to a private collector. She was not interested then, and she would never be open to that idea. She wanted the crown, she wanted to be comfortable and nothing more. She wanted the crown to be available to the world. In our era of centimillionaires and billionaires, she did something we so rarely hear about. She said to herself and to me, I am fortunate and it's enough. I will have what I need, and the rest is for the larger world. In Hillel's terms, she looked beyond herself and gave up personal gain in the process. She thought of the common good. So Alice launched a multi-year effort where by sheer force of will, the crown ended up where it now resides as a centerpiece exhibition at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where it will always be accessible to everyone from across the globe. My personal relationship with Alice had its own meaning. When we are young and starting out, most of us don't want to be given something that we haven't earned. What we do want is the opportunity to prove ourselves. We want the chance to show that we can do a job, to shine, to rise to an occasion. Many times, Alice created unique opportunities for me. In particular, the first two stand out. Toward the end of my freshman year at college, I was home for Passover. Alice was with us. Alice asked about my summer plans, which were then uncertain. The next day, she called a friend who was the head of a prestigious think tank in New York City. 2 days later, I had the interview and a special summer internship. 2 years later, I was home for Passover toward the end of my junior year at Dartmouth. I had taken most of the year off to work in Washington for the House Energy Committee. Again, Alice asked about my summer plans. I told her what I most wanted was to work at the Aspen Institute, which had an annual summer conference on energy policy in Aspen, involving former cabinet officers and the like. But of course, that was impossible. Alice did not know the meaning of the word impossible, which is a way of thinking I learned from her. In any case, same story. Alice called a friend, and a few days later, I was interviewed by the head of special projects at the Aspen Institute. So I spent the summer in Aspen discussing energy policy with people way above my pay grade. Alice had opened a big door, and it turned out to be even bigger than I or anyone expected. And for example, that fall, the Dartmouth Alumni Magazine profiled my work and my Alice-enabled summer adventure. There's much more. I have my own book of adventures with Alice in Wonderland. But whatever snowball of good fortune I had, it was Alice that started and enabled that ball to roll. And some of my most gratifying moments came later, when I had the chance to repay Alice and to do some tangible things for her. Nancy and I are both from large families. We have 22 nieces and nephews, plus 2 daughters. Whenever I get a call from any one of them, I think of Alice. How can I help you, I say. We can make it possible, I say. I try to pass on what Alice gave to me. A few closing thoughts. The true name of the Crown of the Andes is the Crown of Our Lady of the Assumption of Popayán. In 1940, the Pope gave the monastery in Popayán, Colombia, where the crown resided, a special dispensation to raise the crown, to sell the crown, to raise money. In pre-war America, the crown had a widespread, mysterious appeal. In 1937, when the crown was displayed in Detroit, 225,000 people, or 15% of the city's entire population, was said to have come to see it. In our era, 6 million people visit the Met annually. Now, thanks to Alice, over the next decade, tens of millions of people from all faiths will see this remarkable religious icon. The world will always have access to it. In one of the most central decisions of her life, Alice was true to the values Hillel detailed and those of our tradition. She looked beyond herself. Our troubled, chaotic, me-centered world needs more people like Alice. To me, a life of merit is when you leave this world a little better off than you found. Alice lived a life of merit. Our world benefited from the equality she advocated, from her bias for action, from the values she held and lived, and from her gifts to the people who knew her and to our larger society. One final thing, and I so wish it was not the case. Today, this one time, I get to have the last word. Now, Alice, listen to me. Everybody here loves you, and you will always be a blessed memory. Thank you.
Hard to put 43 years into 3 minutes, but I'll try. Alice and I met in May of 1982 at a time of major turmoil and a turning point in my life. I was a young, doe-eyed Wall Street professional who had just flamed out of her first major job and didn't know what to do, and whose family in Chicago, especially her father, Oscar, was saying, "Come home, let us help you." Independent-minded me, on the other hand, heard, "Come home, get married, forget about this career woman stuff. We'll take care of you." And I wasn't having it. I wasn't sure what to do and didn't know many people in New York besides my college and grad school friends. And I didn't really know what skills I had at that time or even how to go about finding a job. As fate would have it, I saw an article in the Times in which Mickey Siebert, who at that time was a New York State banking superintendent, announced her candidacy for the US Senate. I didn't know anything about her except that she was a Wall Street pioneer, and also knew what a banking superintendent was because I had interned for the Illinois State Banking Department during the 2 summers following my junior and senior year in college. So I decided that until I could figure out what I was going to do, I could at least volunteer. So I showed up at the campaign headquarters, and there I met Alice, who looked at me when I walked in and said, "Do you know where you are? Are you sure that you belong here? Do you know that she's a Republican woman?" I said, "Yeah, we have Republicans in Chicago, and my family is a part of that." "Are you sure?" I said, "Yes, I want to be a part of this." And so I became Alice's assistant as she was doing events for Mickey Siebert's campaign. Although Mickey did not win the Republican primary that summer, through Alice, I was introduced to the women's movement and to politics here in New York, including the National Women's Political Caucus, the Women's Forum, the Financial Women's Association, and lo and behold, I found my footing and my home here in New York. Alice opened her heart, she opened her home, and she opened her arms to me, whom she did not know other than the fact that I appeared to be this out of place young Black woman showing up in this Republican campaign. But we got along. We remained connected after that summer. And during the years, she became a major mentor to me and to other people, including President Obama's former ambassador to Switzerland, Azita Rahi, to many people who were a part of her Friends of Bill groups across the country. She was forever sending out words of support through daily emails. She embraced us all, always had a kind word, always welcomed us. And in many ways, she became a mentor to me personally. She became that godmother that we always need to have to guide you, to let you know when you aren't quite on the right path. And then, more importantly, to be there to hug you after you made that mistake that she told you were going to make. And you went ahead and did it anyway. And she would say, "Tootsie, you are going to get through this. Remember, rain is only good when it's wet." And I, go, she was right. She was also always welcoming people, entertaining people, be it in a restaurant or in her home. And I recall my excitement when she said, "I want you to help me do Rosh Hashanah dinner one year." I was like, "Oh, wow, I'm going to learn how to actually cook some of the foods that I like. I really like noodle kugel." So I go over to her home and she says, "Okay, get me the circular from Zabar's." And I'm thinking we're going to order, whatever it is that we need. No, we ordered the whole meal. I was like, "Okay, I got this. I got this." But I do have to say, I like to cook. And during that summer, working with her on the Siebert campaign, she did make something for me that I'd never had before. Has anyone ever had a peanut butter omelet? It was absolutely the most interesting but delicious meal that I had ever had. And I made one this morning in Alice's honor. So, Mom, godmother, mentor, thank you for helping to make me the woman that I am today.